Dear colleagues, hello and welcome to the third part of the Digital Outreach Day. Uh, Thank you for being with us during this very packed days. And today we are welcoming a person who is not only a great supporter of Ukraine, but also a researcher who sees many aspects of life in his own way, adding his unique perspective to what we are doing and how we see it. Luis Perea is an assessment content manager at WIDA, where he leads ESL testing projects. And you probably know him as an English language fellow. He worked in Ukraine and Lithuania, Mexico, and the USA, and he constantly delivers academic trainings. His experience, his experience, he had an experience in 12 countries. So welcome, Luis. We are really happy to have you today here with us.
Thank you, Marina. Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And yes, as you mentioned, Ukraine is very dear to me since I believe it's part of me. I spent 2 years of my life in Ukraine. I got to meet a lot of friends, colleagues, teaching colleagues and students, and I still keep in touch with them. And anyway, I hope this little research would be useful for your context. So yeah, the title is, this is a comparative study in the exploration of teaching strategies using the SIOP, Shelter Instruction Observation Protocol, in both Ukraine and the US. And the idea is to get some of the learnings of this to find ways to decolonize the Ukrainian curriculum and awaken this historical memory in Ukraine, in the wake of the Russian occupation. So, okay, so I want to also very quickly provide special thanks to the following contributors to this study, because I did it when I was in my last year in Ukraine, and then I moved back to the US and I was able to replicate the same study in a school in the US. So anyway, official acknowledgement to these people, especially my colleague Angelica Solotkaya, and also my former graduate students. Okay, so I'm gonna move on. And I have, as we know, it's been a very rough times for our Ukrainian brothers and sisters. I just showing this, and I don't know if there's gonna be some. I'm gonna play a sound and just playing this as means of reflection and maybe kind of like provide a segue on what I would like to do in this presentation. So I'm gonna play the audio. I hope it can be heard. So it's very short. There we go.
Just share the sound when you're playing.
Sorry, were you able to hear that, Marina?
Uh, yeah, just share the sound,
Okay, yeah.
share the computer sound.
Oh, I don't know how to do that. Well, let me just play and you tell me if
Just
you
play.
hear it.
Mhm.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Let me go back here and there. Sorry. Yeah, technical.
No, we can't hear it.
Oh, sounds good. It's okay. I'm just gonna skip it. But anyway, let me just, sorry about that, back down. So yeah, the whole idea is, so I have this recording of an Ukrainian teacher, basically reflecting about the need of materials, better opportunities to be able to teach her students, some online, some in the occupied areas in Ukraine, and this need that Ukrainian students need to have in order to have access to materials, to curriculum, to books, to English, but especially in a way to, to have access to Ukrainian history, Ukrainian literature, poetry, etc. Right. So that was the main idea. So I apologize about the sound. So let me
That's
move
okay.
on. Yes, let me move on to the agenda. So what I'm going to cover very quickly is the theories behind this research, the results of the study, strengths and weaknesses, a comparison of the results in both contexts, Ukraine and the US. I'm going to share some sample strategies and resources, share a sample unit plan that I hope Ukrainian teachers can use in their context. And maybe if there's time, we can do a very quick group activity where we can brainstorm topics to fill or to create a unit plan. So let me go to the next one. Yeah, and let me talk a little bit here about uh, the theoretical part, right? So we have, for instance, education in diaspora, right? So basically, this has to do with these diasporic moments, which are triggered by major events such as wars, revolutions, invasions, which allow to strengthen diaspora activism, right? Identity and long-term political involvement. And as we know, over the last 30 years, the Ukrainian diaspora has shifted from an ethnic identity to a more civic identity, which has been shaped by major migration waves and the Russian aggression, and as we know, in 2014 and 2022. Then the second theoretical principle is this idea of neo-colonialism, right? Which touches on issues on the configuration of migration and diaspora, these ideas of histories of resistance and a struggle against colonial and neo-colonial domination, language, and language rights. So in the particular case of Ukraine, because of Russia's rationale for the war involves a colonial attitude and denies Ukraine's distinct culture, language, and sovereignty. Also, we can see they see Ukraine as a subaltern region, but that is not the case. Therefore, this idea of decolonization of Ukrainian education has been triggered nationally in a struggle to cleansing the old Soviet and Russian imperial narrative. Right? So this is the second theoretical idea behind this study. Also, we have this notion of memory in education. And memory in education is very important because, it allows us understanding our history, our identity, and truth, right? So as we know, in the context of Ukraine, educational spaces allow discussion of conflict, injustice, and difficult historical events through memory and cultural understanding. So this is what is very important. And this leads to this idea of transitional justice, right? Where education can help societies address violence, human rights abuses, and historical trauma. Uh, I believe also linked to this, we have this idea of the global South perspectives are typically ignored by global North narratives. Those who are colonizers making the colonized education important for recognizing censor histories and supporting reparations. So as we know, typically politicians, they may try to manipulate the collective memory to justify power and influence in society, which is the case here in Ukraine. As you know, we know Vladimir Putin's use of Soviet and religious narratives to justify his aggression. But anyway, the point here is that teachers, in this case, Ukrainian teachers play a key role in connecting history to the students' live experiences and community memory, right? So in the case of the Ukrainian context, we need to go back to our roots, to re-encounter who we are as Ukrainians, right? Then the next idea is this notion of curriculum decolonization, which in Ukraine, involves replacing Russian-centered narratives with authentic Ukrainian perspectives. So this idea of colonial academic practices can create an epistemic violence, right? By suppressing marginalized cultures, knowledge, and anyway, worldviews. And also this idea of the colonial theory, argues that colonialism still exists through cultural and intellectual dominance, especially through Eurocentric knowledge systems, which is in this case, Russia. And then we have this idea of Ukrainian resistance in education, which I started, studying this and last year, and it's very interesting. And again, since Russia's invasion, Ukrainian schools and universities have become important, these important spaces for psychological support, stability, and community. As we know, many Ukrainian students continue remote education abroad, while also keeping Ukrainian studies and English learning for European integration. And also, as we know, in occupied Ukrainian regions, teachers have faced pressure to adopt these Moscow-approved curricula under the intimidation from Russian authorities. And anyway, so the whole point of this study is to create these strategies that I want to present, resources where high school and university Ukrainian students and teachers can use to further learn about their own history and heritage, right? In an attempt to rediscover the collective memory of Ukrainian culture prior to the beginning of the war in 2014 and pre-Maidan. Okay, so this was the theoretical part. Let me go into some challenges, some analysis of the literature that I have done very quickly, and also some interviews that I have conducted with some Ukrainian teachers, right? But I'm not going to read all of this, but just to point out some of the challenges from teachers, right? We have this idea of needs of adaptive environments for different learning styles. There's external factors, right? Stress, limited resources, disrupted routines, diminish motivation, forced to use the Moscow-approved curriculum, Russian soldiers stealing children whose parents receive the Russian curriculum, education being seen as propaganda to erase the Ukrainian identity. And this is, the blue bullets is what I have found on the literature. The orange bullets is, results from interviews that I have conducted with Ukrainian teachers. And some of these are, blackouts that interrupt the lessons, priorities shift to survival, of course. The shelling causes stress and exhaustion, air raids, unstable internet, poor power supply, displacement of teachers and students, low pay, heavy workload, emotional burnout, anxiety, lack of motivation, declining mental health for teachers and students, right? So these are some of the issues that our Ukrainian teachers are facing. And let me touch a little bit on what have been some of the Ukrainian teachers' experiences in the context of war, right? So we have, teaching remotely and in person is under threat. This focus on English, reading, speaking, listening, watching media. Teachers balance formal instruction with creative approaches. So Ukrainian teachers are becoming more creative. Some students preferring traditional classroom learning as opposed to online. Students pursuing self-study and online learning outside Ukraine. And from some of the interviews I have conducted, we have this frequent shifting between online and offline formats. teaching amid sirens and blackouts. You know, there's this shift on emotional support and flexibility to help our students. Students often are absent or they're, in another country. This need to keep interactivity and positivity despite the stress of the war, fatigue from night attacks, poor concentration, lecturers or fear job losses, and unsafe working conditions, right? So some of the experiences from teachers. And now let me shift to the actual study, right? So this was a study, as I mentioned before, that I conducted back when I was living in Ukraine in a university that was very dear for me, the Sukhomlinsky National University in Mykolaiv. And then after that experience, I moved back to the States and I was coordinator and coordinating an ESL program and a school called Greyhounds in the city of Live Oak in Texas. So basically, I did observations and I implemented an investigation on how the way teachers would teach would be in alignment with the SIOP, Shelter Instruction Observation Protocol, which is basically a framework for effective instruction in content classrooms. So probably here in Ukraine and in Europe, I know that the analogous approach would be um, I forgot, but I will come back to the acronym. But let me move here. So the SIOP basically it's divided into these A components, right? The first one has to do with lesson preparation, how teachers can prepare their lessons and deliver those, building background, so putting together all of these resources, materials, texts, etc., to build the background of the content to deliver it to the students. Comprehensible input, very important, right? As we know, we could be very uh, how can I say it, smart and very, very well versed in our content. But if we don't know how to explain it to students, that could be problematic, right? Like maybe, I don't know, teaching algebra to eighth graders. If we don't know how to make this content understandable to students, even though we know the content is not going to work. So that is comprehensible input. Strategies, what strategies we can use in the classroom, right? How can we break down the lessons? Are we using visuals? Are we using vocabulary, per word, etc., right? Interaction is also very important. It's not only the interaction between teacher and students, but students to students, students to teachers, etc., right? Practice and application. Are there opportunities in the classroom for students to put into practice what they have been learning, right? How we apply this. Lesson delivery is the lesson delivery in a comprehensible way. And also this idea of review and assessment. So again, an assessment doesn't have to be at the end of the course, but it has to be continuous and ongoing, right? Throughout our lesson, ideally. Anyway, so here my argument is that, well, my argument and the creators of the SIOP is that the SIOP is this framework that was designed to help teachers create lessons which are comprehensible to ESL students, right? And these strategies can be applied to help English as a second language students, English as a foreign language students, special education students, and essentially all students in the classroom, right? And the good thing about the SIOP is that this can be applied to any content area: math, science, social studies, history, English language arts, literature, grammar, biology, foreign languages, you name it. It's applicable to all content areas. Now, here I want to show you, these are, the SIOP comprises 30 constructs or 30 main things that that teachers need to be looking for when implementing their lessons, right? So it ranges from making sure students know the content and language objectives, making sure I'm using supplementary materials, right? Making sure I am adapting the level of the content to the level of the students, using meaningful activities, making sure that I can link previous background knowledge, experiences from the students to what I'm teaching, links made between past and new learning, right? Key vocabulary, comprehensible input. I'm using the appropriate speech, not talking too fast, right? Explanation, a good explanation of academic tasks, using a variety of techniques, not only the same technique, right? Using different strategies, scaffolding, breaking down the concept that I'm trying to explain, using a variety of different question types, right? This could be higher order thinking type of questions, literal questions, to have a variety, right? Interaction, making sure there's interaction among all the students. And this has to do with the grouping configurations, right? In some cases, it is good to clarify the key concepts or abstract concepts in the student's first language. In this case, Ukrainian, right? Using different hands-on materials, manipulatives, application of content and language knowledge, also the language skills, making sure that what I'm teaching are supported by my objectives, right? Content objectives and language objectives, making sure students are engaged, hopefully at least 90% of the lesson, right? Making sure the pacing of the lesson is appropriate, right? Not rushing, not going too slow, but providing a quality instruction. Pacing of the lesson, the speed. Are my students getting it? If they're getting it, my pace is good. If they're not getting it, maybe I need to slow down, right? Reviewing vocabulary, review key content concepts towards the end of the lesson, providing feedback to students throughout the lesson, and making sure there's a good assessment of student comprehension. So anyway, these are the 30 main constructs of the SIOP. And I was going to play a couple videos, but because there's sound issues, it's okay. I'm going to skip them. They provide a quick review of what the SIOP is. And let me skip that. Sorry. Oops, I did something here that I shouldn't. Let me go back here. I'm going to skip this other one. I'll share these videos later. But anyway, so let's go to the results of this study. So here, let me start with the context in Texas, USA, in this school, Greyhorse Liveoak. So basically, the methodology, the approach that I used was mixed methods type of research design, where I basically something that is interesting about the SIOP is that these 30 constructs are converted into a rubric that it looks like a rubric to evaluate teachers when they are teaching. And it is very useful. Why? Because basically what I did, I used this SIOP rubric. I conducted and with other colleagues several observations of the teachers who were serving ESL students, right? And then I converted basically these constructs into Likert scales, and I was able also to get some comments from there. So I also anyway, so I created this Likert scale where I wanted to understand the students' opinions about their teachers' way of teaching. So I got that feedback, but I also, using the same constructs, the same strategies, I asked teachers' opinions about their own teaching. How do you think you are teaching your classes, right? And by getting all of these sources of data, I was able to do a triangulation, and then we got results, right? So let me talk about the participant universe. So here in Texas, I was able to survey 99 scholars, middle schoolers, and a few high schoolers from 6 to 8. And I also was we were able to interview 17 upper grade teachers, also teaching 6 through 8 middle school. So for upper school, and a few of these teachers were also observed twice, right, to keep consistency on the way they were teaching. Then in order to understand these results, let me kind of give you the scenario of how we sort of graded these teachers, right? So basically the SIOP is, and again, I as I mentioned, the SIOP is a rubric or a rating scale from 0 to 4. The strategy is being implemented, is highly detected. So I broke it down in this way. So getting a score of 4 between 4 and 3.5 means that strategy was highly detected, highly observed, right? Then 3.5 to 3, it was detected. Then between 3 and 2, it was somewhat detected. You know, we saw it, but not quite. Then between 2 and 1, it was sort of poorly detected, not quite. We saw some elements there, but not quite. And between 1 to 0, it was not observed at all, right? So this is kind of like the scoring scale. And here are the sort of the results. So what we can see, these are the quantitative results. So here were the students' opinions, which is the blue, which, as you can see, you know, they range between 2 and 3 scores, and you know they kind of stay in that range. So these are the opinions that they thought about their teachers teaching these lessons, right? Then we asked the teachers, and notice that the teachers, you know, they range a little bit below. We have some 1.5 and below, or 1, even, you know, on average between 2, maybe reaching 2.5. So it was interesting that the teachers were more strict on themselves. They felt like, well, I'm not doing that great job teaching my students, right? And then we conducted the observations, where the observations were not that bad. We have some of these strategies reaching 3.5, looking at 3, so on an average of 3, right? So we kind of see some interesting patterns, right? And let me just give you a different representation. So looking at the SIOP rating scale, right? So obviously our hope is that all the teachers would teach all of these 30 constructs in a level of a 4 score, right? So this is our benchmark, number 4. And then when we are able to average everything, put everything together, these are the results. So interestingly, you know, in the context of Texas, we see this range between, again, 2 and 3, right? So it was not bad. It sounds like they did an okay job implementing SIOP strategies, right? So this is just a little visual. And I just want to point out, these are the gaps, whatever you see here. So these are the gaps that we need to work for those teachers, right? And then let me go to another way to represent the data. So here we have a mean looking at the rating scale, the score from the SIOP from 0 to 4. So what is interesting is that, again, the teachers' opinions of themselves teaching were about 2.14, right? Interestingly, the students' opinions about their own teachers teaching them was a little bit higher, right? So they thought the teachers did a fine job, right? And then the teacher observations were kind of like in between, you know? So we have 2.31, which I guess the range is there, right? The numbers are okay. And another thing that I just want to point out, that this is very interesting and it's important. I want to point out what is good to use shelter instruction using the SIO, because this diagram basically shows in that year the previous scores of all the students in middle school using the TELPAS. So the TELPAS stands, let me see if I remember, Texas English Language Proficiency Assessment System. This is the standardized English as a second language assessment that it is used in Texas to measure the proficiency level of students across the state, right? So anyway, the numbers here indicate that all of the students in middle school in this program, we have 46% who score advanced high, 23% score advanced, then 25% intermediate, and 6% beginning. So here my argument is that shelter instruction using the SIOP is good because it is meant to be targeting especially higher proficiency of levels, right? So it will be applied for, it will be applicable for this 46% and this 23%. Anyway, so that is just a visual that I wanted to show here. And then let me go and talk about some of the qualitative results in this context. So these are some of the SIOP strengths. These are some of the things that we thought were positive. So for instance, teachers use a good, they make use of good supplementary materials like graphs, models, handouts, different books, hands-on manipulatives, realia. They use pictures, visuals, multimedia, and demonstrations, right? Also, they emphasize key vocabulary. So they introduced it, they had it written, repeated, and highlighted to students to see, right? Also, we have regarding using a variety of question types, it's important to have a range of literal to higher order thinking of questions. Yeah, we have a good range, literal, analytical, and interpretative questions. Regarding activities that integrate all language skills, they implemented those in all language domains, as we can see here. Let me move on. Now, let me talk about the areas of improvement. So this is where the American teachers sort of fail using the SIOP, right? So we need to improve regarding, how we present language, right? We need to develop vocabulary, reading comprehension skills. We need to practice the writing process, use functional language. We need to focus on particular grammar points, higher order thinking skills. Regarding opportunities to use the L1, we didn't see translanguaging strategies, right? Allowing students to use L1 dictionary, monolingual dictionary, bilingual dictionaries, right? Regarding hands-on materials, we needed to have hands-on experiences, including manipulatives, practice sessions to be enhanced. And regarding grouping configurations, we saw the lack of, we observed a lot of individual work, but we needed more work with partners, triads, small groups between 4 and 5 people, cooperative learning groups, whole group, etc., right? Also, some areas of improvement have to do with first language literacy, second language and proficiency, reading ability, including more cultural and age appropriateness in the way we provide our concepts, right? Also making sure our students would be engaged between 90 and 100%. So for instance, considering the allocated time, which is the amount of time to spend studying a topic or doing an academic task versus the engaged time, right? The time students are actively participating in instruction during the time allocated and academic learning time, the students' time on task when the task is related to materials that they will be tested on. Also, we lack comprehensive review of key vocabulary. So using analogies to understand vocabulary, looking at tense, parts of speech, sentence structure, exposing our students to new terminology, word study books, grouping words by structure, grouping words by topic, for instance, all the vocabulary that has to do with American Revolution, right? Semantic maps, linking events to related verbs, adjectives, adverbs, and defining the school talk. What is a school talk? The language of discussion, turn taking, sharing ideas, how questions could be answered, and so on, right? Other areas of improvement are conducting assessments, whether if they are informal, on the spot, authentic, allowing application to real life students engage in meaningful tasks, or multidimensional, basically teachers using different ways of determining student performance, right? It could be written pieces, audio, video recording, uh, student and parent interviews, observations, etc. And the use of language objectives that are supported by the lesson, right? Having a clear, simple language objective written at the beginning of the lesson. So those were our areas of improvement. Some other ones include stop briefly and summarizing with the student's help, summarizing with a partner, doing a final review to help students each other, also using things such as graphic organizers, outlines, level study guides, highlighted text, tape text, adapted text, GSAW text reading, using notes, right? And here, I'm not going to read all of these, but a need of metacognitive strategies, cognitive strategies, social affective strategies, which are important. Like when we look at the context of Ukraine, we need to make sure that our students are effectively ready and they feel positive and safe, right? Despite the situation. Teaching learning processes, whether if it is teacher-centered, teacher-assisted, peer-assisted, right? Allowing more interdependence in self-monitoring, self-regulation, and scaffolding by providing many opportunities. And this is the last one on this topic, but it is good to have teacher-centered activities, teacher-assisted, but most importantly, allowing these peer-assisted and student-centered strategies, right? Role-playing, peer tutoring, reciprocal teaching, rehearsal strategies. So having things such as repeated readings, selective understanding, using two-column notes, elaboration strategies, using mental imaginary, guided imagery. How do you think this looks like in this context, right? Creating analogies and also teaching organizational strategies, clustering strategies, graphic organizers, outlining. Now, let me talk about the context in Mykolaiv, Ukraine, right? So same idea, we use mixed methods approach. We started with some quantitative, qualitative type of method using Likert scale questionnaire and notes and observations for both teachers and students. Then we converted this into a Likert scale for both teachers and students. And then we use the observational rating scales and notes on the classroom, right? So these are the results. So here we can see the blue lines. These are the teachers rating themselves, okay? And here we have the students' opinions about their own teachers, right? So we can see a little discrepancy, some discrepancies here. And this is our goal 4, right? So it is interesting to see that students were a little bit more lenient to the teachers than teachers to themselves, right? And here we have kind of like the whole comparison. This is our benchmark here. I'm putting everything together. What is very interesting is that we have higher means for the Ukrainian teachers. We have a lot of 3s, you know, a range of 3s, 3.23, 3.6, and a few 2s, 225, 226. Here in this graph, we have some lack of data because the teachers were not able to answer some of the questions. But anyway, that's okay because we were able to get information from 3 sources, right? So some of the takeaways from the Ukrainian teachers. So here I organized the data into teachers' comments on the SIOP rating and students' comments. So for instance, for defining content objectives, the teachers say, yes, we define them orally. Regarding using supplementary materials, they said, yes, we use a lot of materials such as videos, audio materials. Regarding meaningful activities in the 4 domains, They say, we make links to real life. We use supported language skills. Activities are chosen according to the subject of the lesson. A little bit of opposite to what students say. They say, some teachers give lectures, but don't give any life examples. That would be useful, right? So kind of like some of the more lenient comments. Then here we have teachers using appropriate skills for the students in terms of relating past to new concepts. All the activities and tasks done were linked to previous learned material and vocabulary. Uh, Regarding speech was used appropriately for a student proficiency level, and explanations were simple for every student based on the teachers. Regarding academic explanations, making clear, here we have a comment from the students. Some of the classes were dull and uninteresting. Um, Here, regarding the techniques to make content comprehensible, teachers said, we use different techniques, we use gestures, even though we check for the understanding of the tasks and make examples. They use different techniques and strategies during the lesson, which was very positive. And here on the other side, we have comments from the students. Not all the teachers are interested in classes. Some of them hold classes dull and uninteresting. Some of them, they talk about the technologies, right? There's a lack of technical base and internet. Then supporting strategies for the students. So we see that for the age of the students in this context were between 18 and 21. The lessons were carried in an easy, friendly atmosphere. They were discussed together with the teacher in the form of dialogue with it's positive. They mentioned a lot of interactive activities, group activities, work in pairs, different types of questions using allowed to elicit the students' opinions. And on the other side, from the students, we see it would be better to have more classes, more communication in groups, and less boring homework. They said the university should provide creative collaboration between the student and teacher in all types of educational processes. What else? Here we have, there were not a lot of group configurations, but good interaction between the students and teachers. She made them work in groups, but not divide them. Students were given enough time to complete the assignment. Too much native language. Teacher providing hands-on materials. Always communicating and encouraging students, etc. Right? So let me move on. These are some comments. I'm gonna speed up here because of the time. But let me look at the comparison and results in both contexts. So again, the idea here is that Ukrainian educators did way much better than American educators, which is very interesting and very good. And let me show you a much better visual. Here we have in the blue bars the Ukrainian teachers, versus the American teachers, right? So we see lots of threes here. And here are the American students, but kind of like looking more into detail. I think these are great results. Here, going back to our previous rubric, we can see that Ukrainian teachers did a good job in defining content objectives, language objectives, using meaningful activities to integrate lesson concepts, concepts explicitly linked to students' background and experiences, links made between past and new learning, key vocabulary emphasize, comprehensible input, very good. Then here we have content objectives supported by the lesson, language objectives supported by the lesson, pacing of the lesson, review of key vocabulary, review key content concepts, feedback to students on their output, assessment of a student, lots of very good scores versus the American teachers, that it was an eye opener that we needed more training to do a better job, which was interesting. This is just to make sure the reliability of the instruments were good. We got 0.95, 0.92, 0.91, just to make sure I am in compliance with the instruments. Some sample strategies and resources. So I just, I'm sure you are familiar with Gene Cummings quadrants, but basically what we want to see based on SIOP and our lessons are a lot of context embedded strategies, rich strategies such as using visuals, using videos, breaking down the content, using a lot of scaffolding, visuals and diagrams. And also we want to see, a lot of the uh, a lot of the CALP, right? So we have, cognitively demanding tasks. So those tasks which are extremely difficult, we want to see them in this quadrant, right? The idea is abstract concepts, we want to allow a lot of scaffolding strategy. So this goes hand to hand with the SIOP. And here, this is the connection to how we can make things better, hopefully for Ukrainian teachers and students. So here I made a list of some of the possible strategies that we can use. Of course, using SIOP strategies, metacognitive strategies, and some of this. And here I just made a list of possible content that could be used to enhance, the learning of Ukrainian high schoolers, middle schoolers, even university students, right? Topics such as Ukrainian literature, Ukrainian history pre-Maidan, history of Ukrainian literature, even important figures, Taras Shevchenko, topics such as the Holodomor, ants in Olbia, Greeks in Ukraine, right? Anyway, so this is not an exhaustive list, just some ideas. But let me just spend the next 3 minutes sort of talking about some of the strategies, QARS, question and answer relationship. This is divided into 3 different types of comprehension: literal, interpretative, and apply. So basically, literal comprehension means readers can recognize information which is explicitly stated in the text, right? Reading the lines. So probably this can summarize that. Literal comprehension, right there. What is the goal? To get information in the text is easy to find. What do? I read the lines. The information is right there. And I have an example question here. What does the character look like, right? Or how do you know that? So they go back to the text, right? I have an example text here and sample questions. And because of the time, I don't want to cover those. Then the next level is interpretative comprehension. This means readers can construct ideas or opinions that are based on the material read, but not stated explicitly in the text, right? So it's reading between the lines. So let me give you a conceptual example here. So think and search. The goal here is to integrate ideas in the text, have to put different parts together, is reading between the lines, right? So to get information, students need to think and search. And I have a couple example questions here. What is the personality of the main character, right? How do you know it, right? So kind of like tapping at the next level, example and questions, and apply comprehension, right? This consists in connecting and integrating the information, ideas, and values from the students reading with their own experience or by applying this in other contexts, right? So this means reading beyond the lines. And the conceptual idea here is to express an opinion, to form new ideas. The answer is not in the text. It can be answered without returning to the story. It's about connecting your experience to what you have read, right? Reading beyond the lines, it's on your own. An example question is, what made the author write about this? how do you know, right? So these are a set of strategies that we can apply to reading, but also for looking at videos. Here, this strategies is scaffolding nonfiction texts. So this is just a resource. I will share the PowerPoint, but there's a website called Rewardify where you can plug in text, which is complex, and you can rewrite the text with vocabulary at a lower English proficiency level. But again, with AI technology, now we can do the same very easily. Also, this idea of literature circles, which is reading groups. And basically, I'm going to say literature circles are small peer-led discussions that, members come together, they read a book, a poem, a story, an article, and they discuss it, right? So that this is kind of like the main idea, but every student has different roles, and they have a specific assignment, and then they come ready to discuss it. And I just gonna tap on a role here: the discussion leader, questioner, discussion director. So your job is to develop a list of questions you think your group should discuss about the assigned section of the book. Use your knowledge of levels of questions to create thought-provoking, literal, interpretative, and universal questions. Right? The idea is to keep the discussion alive. There's different roles that I'm not gonna read, but students can have different ways to interact with the book. Other roles, and I have an article that goes into this that I can definitely share. Now, one of the things that I learned is how to use this in nonfiction text, meaning articles. Is it possible? Yes, it is. I have some of the roles here that I have put together based on my experience interacting with students in Ukraine that you're welcome to have. I'm not going to go through this, but here they are. Other ideas that you can use are this notion of Socratic seminars. Socratic seminars is similar to literature circles, but basically the teacher provides pre-prepared questions, and the idea is that students come into a circle and they discuss the text, and all of this is led by students, right? But anyway, I'm gonna leave the information here. There's directions, and there's different roles that can be used by students. Another idea is using this idea of literal, interpretative, and apply levels of comprehension in documentaries, in videos, right? So I have put together, this is another idea. For instance, in the topic of the Holodomor, what is the setting? Who are the participants? What are the origins? What are the consequences, right? That I believe this can be used virtually. I want to share, and let me, just because we have a few minutes, I think you can see here. So this is a unit plan that I would like to share with all of you. These are some ideas about how to put together all of these resources, right? Reclaiming Ukrainian history via collective memory. So these are some of the principles, right? A unit designed to help Ukrainian ESL and EFL teachers who live in Ukraine and in diasporas in other countries to have additional resources to teach English. And this idea is to reclaim and decolonize Ukrainian curriculum and history apart from Russian-led curriculum that has been developed in occupied areas of the country, right? So just kind of going through this very quickly. So applying some ideas from the SIOP. Here we have some of the strategies that I was listing. Context and content, some of the topics that can be used, and the US teachers can also feed in, right? Here we have expectations. So what do I expect to gain, or I expect to have my students learn, understand some of the historical events of modern Ukrainian history prior to Maidan events, or understand how Greeks came to develop Olbia near the Black Sea. So some ideas. Competencies, what is what I want them to really apply, right? Understanding what the origins of Ukrainian history and geography have been, right? I have some suggested culminated demonstrations or ideas for students. So you can have your students do an analysis of videos and documentaries on Ukrainian history in English, right? And apply this idea of the course. Analysis of lectures on Ukrainian history using the course. Biographies, right? Analysis of readings on Ukrainian literature. Group PowerPoint presentations on selected topics. Here I have look at the benchmarks in some of the grades from Ukraine, grades 10 through 11 and 5th through 9. There's links here that you can use and you can kind of like, you decide, I'm going to focus on this particular Ukrainian benchmark, right? Then task analysis. If you want to plug in or not activities, but looking at these Bloom's taxonomy activities, knowledge, comprehension, application, some ideas that you can already use or that you can come up with new ones, right? For instance, contrasting events from the different historical eras from Ukraine to current events in our real life, things like that. Concepts, terms, and grammatical structures. So you can make a list. These are, again, some a suggested list of concepts that you can focus on. If you want to focus on specific vocabulary, prose, poetry, antiquity, diaspora, Cossack hosts, autonomy, populism, etc., right? You can even include grammatical structures that you want to focus on. And again, these are just suggestions. Skills being developed, writing, for speaking, for instance, presenting a PowerPoint, sharing homework, for listening to and watching videos to reinforce comprehension or clarification in the aspects of Ukrainian history, and so on. There's a unit plan here. You can adapt your methodology. So for this particular unit, I'm using the constructivist method, cooperative method, student-centered approach, right? Some description, meaningful activities. So here, you can use these guiding questions to fit into your unit plan. What is the concept, skill, the transfer bridge connection that I want to achieve with my students, right? What are the goals? What will the students be able to do at the end of this unit? What is the vocabulary that I want them to learn? Being there. Where can you take the students so they have meaningful context? So they can observe videos on the selected topics, research the web, PowerPoints, etc. Setting the stage. How will I arrange the room? What do I need to create? What do I need to create a context-filled environment, right? And I try to adapt this to the concept of virtual learning, right? Multisensory prompts, people and resources. You can even invite speakers, native speakers of English. Anticipatory set, how can I get them hooked? Role-playing, group discussions, pictograms, objectives and purpose of my unit, director instruction. How am I gonna make sure I cover things such as linguistic intelligence or bodily kinesthetics, spatial interpersonal, logical mathematical learners, right? Processing the experience, teacher demonstration modeling. How can I model this? Modeling, analyzing vocabulary, analyzing, understanding concepts, events. Anyway, there's a list of suggestions here. How can I check for understanding? What is my guided practice? How can I have my students do independent practice? What homework, participation, elicitation I can provide, and assessment. I can give them a big research project or a project that they can work individually or in pairs, right? Learning celebration. Students will realize historical importance of this issue in the platform of the Ukrainian history and collective memory. And at the end, I have some resources, Socratic seminars adapted from the WIDA standards. You have some resources here as far as questions. And I have put together here some video lectures with discussion questions using the course For instance, some of these videos are documentaries that I put together myself when I was in Ukraine. We interviewed a lot of people within Ukraine, a lot of teachers. We tried to tap on different topics such as the Holodomor. We tried to tap on things such as I also added free videos that you can use from lectures all about Ukraine. These would be suitable for high school students, university students. And at the end, I have, let me show you, where are you? And I have about a minute. Let me see. Just scrolling down here. Where are you? Just a second. I have put together a list of resources. So you can have resources about history of Ukraine, Ukrainian literature, videos and documentaries are the ones that I was talking about. There's some lectures, the ones that I was talking about, which are free. So you can use this, and there's already created, ready to go questions. And I think we're at time. And anyway, so I'm going to stop here. I think you're muted, Maria. Marina,
I
sorry.
see. Yeah. Thank you so much. That was very thought-provoking. And I hope that our colleagues, after they have watched it, will share their thoughts and ideas with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so much.
much. Thank you
All right.
for supporting us. Thank you for being with us. This really, really matters. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Marina, and everybody. So I'll see you around. All right.
Yes, yes,
Thank you.
thank you.